Hi there, I'm going to do a review for Alien Resurrection. This movie came out in 1997 and directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Probably getting that wrong, but this film is sort of like a mixed bag of how well it was actually received. It did have some high star power in it for sure. Sigourney Weaver comes back as Ripley. Um, or much earlier, Winona Ryder is playing the android on board that nobody knows is an android until fairly late in the movie. I think that's pretty much all the same thing with all the movies, is that nobody knows there's an android. There's a lot of high ranking. There's definitely a lot of big names in this movie for what it was. There's a lot of big names. Unfortunately, the name that should have stayed in the film for longer, Michael Wincott's character Elgin, was I think should have been in the film a heck of a lot longer. Got killed off really early. Um, Ultimately, the movie's got like a sort of corniness to it that the other movies sort of basically lack. This movie's sort of like Aliens in a way, with this somewhat sillier dialogue and sequences being a little bit different. But it nonetheless, it more or less works as a movie. It's not terribly good, but it at least gets the aliens done pretty well. I think all the alien movies did this well enough. They managed to establish this in the first film that the aliens are malevolent, very malevolent creatures. But yeah, this is basically a bunch of pirates that were ordered to bring a bunch of people to a military space station, sort of out out of reach of the main government, and yeah, but basically they're trying to create a hive alien mind. I don't know. It's kind of a stupid plot. The plot does not really make any sense. In fact, at one point, the aliens determine that their cages are vulnerable to their acids, so they kill one of their comrades to put a hole through. So altogether, a big question is why would you make your prison for a species that has acidic blood? Why did you make that prison out of, you know, stuff that can be corroded? Obviously, so that something really bad can happen and the aliens get loose and they wipe out the entire military. Because apparently the army on this, apparently or the navy or whatever, the Space Marine Corps is absolutely useless in this movie. Basically, they all get killed. It does contain some good early sequences, but ultimately, it it's not too bad, I guess. It's actually quite a watchable film if you can just tolerate the silliness of it. It's nonetheless, I actually don't mind it at all. I think it's a workable alien film. It's definitely not as good as Alien or possibly even Aliens, but I think it's a bit better than Alien 3. I'm not sure. It's hard calling those movies because all the Alien movies have different styles and tones to them. They have a different way of being made. They were made differently. So it's very hard to compare them logistically. Um, Unfortunately, this movie, though, came in the heels of Alien 3, and Alien 3 was a bit of a disappointment. Um, you know, and this movie carries off that. Ellen Ripley's character is basically brought back through a cloning experiment. It's a rather funny sequence too in the movie where she has to deal with her previous clones. Nonetheless, it works well enough. The android played by Winona Ryder has some interesting sequences. They take a little while to figure out she's an android. Apparently, there's a bit of a backstory on that, which is what I kind of enjoy about these movies, is that they can introduce a backstory on a character in the blink of an eye just because it's there. They don't go into much depth. They don't have a retrospective like a moment where they go back in time to show you what happened in the robot uprising, but nonetheless, she was one of the robots that made it out apparently. But yeah, it's a workable film. I actually ironically think of all the sequences that are good, I think the best sequences, ironically, between the general and or the admiral and the one pirate having their usual transaction about hospitality on board this space station. But yeah, they are trying to get a queen so they can breed and create all these new scientific discoveries. And of course, it all goes wrong the moment that somebody decides that they don't want to be in containment anymore. I can't believe the aliens would have problems with this. But yeah, the aliens more or less break out and cause mayhem, kill everybody except for our protagonists and all their people. Um, I think this movie just wasn't quite. I think it was a bit better received than Alien 3, just because it wasn't so dreary and depressing. But it's still kind of a depressing film. I mean, they end up finding out that Earth has been basically pancaked. I guess it's a cut sequence that showed it, but yeah, this movie. I don't know. I don't mind it. It's a funnier film than the other ones. It definitely to me it's a step up from the movies that Ridley Scott would end up later making called Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I honestly don't like Prometheus. The older it gets, the worse it gets, and Alien Covenant has almost no redeeming qualities. But Alien Resurrection does have to me does have some minor redeeming qualities. I mean, it's basically meant to be a bit of a satirical movie, and it was made in the 90s, and this is before certain things had happened in life that certainly changed filmmaking. But yeah, the aliens bust out. It produces rather awkward sequences where apparently they can put in place traps and things like that. Although it was never entirely clear if this was a capacity they had before. But yeah, all in all, workable alien film, not as good as most of the others. Um, One could argue it's better than Alien 3 for being less depressing, and other ones would say it's worse than Alien 3 because some of the plot here is just a mess. This movie did not have multiple script rewrites and multiple edits, unlike Alien 3, which went through 6 different script rewrites to arrive at the finished product, and that finished product was a bit of a mess, and I think everybody noticed that. Resurrection is a little bit more clear cut. Um, it's got all the problems of a typical sequel Alien movie. Yeah. What's one thing that is interesting about this is that this is one of Joss Whedon's early writing efforts. Before he went on to bigger and better things. But yeah, it might have been better received, I think, if it hadn't come off the heels of Alien 3. I think if this had been in 1992 Alien 3 instead of a 1997 Alien Resurrection, I think it would have worked. It probably would have been a better received movie. By the time this came out, most people just weren't really in the mood to watch it. I think it did quite a bit better at the box office, though. None of them did spectacularly well. I mean, these are sort of independent, R-rated, what is it, thriller movies, horror thriller. I don't think there's much else to be said about that. It kind of ends on a depressing note. It introduces one of the most dreaded sequences you could ever imagine in your life, though. I think this is the reason why actually some people don't like this film, is that it's got the baby sequence, and the baby hatches out of the alien queen. Oh, and that's a pretty bad sequence. Honestly, I think that's the main reason why so many people are not big and fond about this movie. That sequence inspired the Alien Romulus sequence, which was nothing awesome either. It was just a bad sequence. It was horrible. I was like thinking, is that really what they're supposed to be depicting? That almost looks like a nightmare in of itself. But this movie here, it was coming off as laughable and stupid. And honestly, they could have just should have just found a way to write their way out of it, get out of that situation. But nonetheless, it ends, and I don't know. It's fun little movie. It's stupid fun movie. Is basically what it amounts to being. And Michael Wincott got killed way too early. I wish he had made it through the entire film right to the end because he brought a sturdiness to the film that was like basically lacking once he was dead. But nonetheless, it works well enough. So I sort of like it. I like it for its humor. But yeah, there it is.